Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's AbleNet webinar, which is feature matching. And basically, what is it? What are we talking about today? My name is Kirk Behnke, and I'm one of the co-presenters for today. And my other co-presenter is?
And I'm Kelly Fonner. I'm presenting with Kirk. We've figured out that we both have, together, we've got 64 years worth of assistive technology experience. So hopefully that'll get us through an hour.
Yeah, and we're not saying who has the most either. So anyway.
Okay, there we go. It has begun.
It has begun.
So Kirk and I have been doing this for quite a while, and we always come into this question about feature matching. So it's good for us to know as we go forward with the information who you all are. So first poll is up. So welcome you and find out who everybody else is. Go ahead and click on your screen as to why you are attending this webinar. So we know that some people are here for specific areas of assistive technology like augmentative and alternative communication, or access to tablets and computers, etc. Some people might be specific, there's a misspelling, to home and environmental daily living. Some people are a combination, which it seems like that the AAC and combination responses seems to be the one that's really things that have brought people here. So I'm going to count down the poll from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just so we see what it is that people are here for, and we welcome you. You can ask questions in the Q&A space. They'll get flagged to us throughout the presentation, and we move forward.
Great. So I get to tell us what we're going to do today. So in regards to feature match and what is it, our session agenda is looking at an overview of what is feature match. Basically why we conduct feature matching in the area of assistive technology, and specifically how we would conduct feature matching. And then of course we have a ton of resources on feature matching for you to then continue your learning after today's webinar. You will be receiving, or if you haven't already, the feature match charts, which we will allude to today within our presentation, so that you have some charts to refer some information that we're providing with you today. So when we talk about feature matching, it's really when we talk about the formal and informal process in which the attributes of assistive technology that are needed and desired are determined. So that's sort of like the, the Webster's Dictionary piece. But what we want to make sure that we highlight today is really that it's not only in a formal process, but it's also an informal process in order to gain data on what types of features of assistive technology will really match the needs of your student or the person whom you're working with. When we talk about supportive effective decision-making around this whole process, we really want to look at how we can solicit widespread participation, in the design of environmentally friendly and a systematic process. We also want to ensure that all know about and the use of the processes within the consideration, the evaluation, the implementation, all of those different types of quality indicators, which we're alluding to, that are really aligned with the feature matching process. We also want to provide time to collaborate as team members, so that you're not doing this as a lone ranger out there, but you're really collaborating with either teachers or vocational job coaches, employers, administrators, parents, consumers, significant others, etc., so that you have that time to really look at the needs of the individual and then match the different types of features of the technologies to those needs. So,
and during feature matches, really where you can honor the input from everyone. Not that you're not doing it throughout the whole process, but everybody gets their input here before you start sorting through what is or isn't viable options.
Great. So we're really just expecting participation. And then we also want to reward the participation of, folks being part of the whole decision-making process, because it is a team that actually does the decision-making. So there is a need for guidelines. And our studies and the research studies have really pointed to the need for a systemic, way of planning, developing, and delivering assistive technology devices and services. It's been, so many years, and Kelly and I, since we both together have, what'd you say, 64? Really?
Yeah.
64 years of applying assistive technology. We hopefully learn from our mistakes, and that we just don't go by an expert model, that we use collaborative ways to come to decisions, that we use consistently and clearly understood descriptions of what quality assistive technology services are. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available to you in regards to the need for guidelines around feature matching.
Second poll, so again, it helps us a little bit more as we move forward, is what's the main age group of the consumers or your own child that you're assessing with for the use of assistive technologies? It's always fun to watch as these polls start to grow. A lot of people in the K-12 area, a lot of people that are a combination of all of the age groups.
Sorry, I'm just trying to demonstrate on the slide itself. That's where you can put your poll, designate your age of the consumers that you're using.
And I'm going to count down the poll. So, because we've got 49 responses of 66 so far. We've got over 200 people registered for the webinar. So we were looking, there's 66 people with us online. So we've got, still counting up here. I'm going to count it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So as we look today, as I was mentioning, we have a lot of people that are K-12 educators and people that work with individuals of all ages in there. And I guess the all ages and a combination of above kind of put that group together. We've got a large group of you that are looking across age and range populations.
Okay, so within that, since we do have quite a bit of the age range here, but we do have quite a number of people from the K-12 settings, just wanted to give a little, assistive technology historic perspective in regards to AT within the federal statutes. And so we also have, AT is written in IDEA. It's written in Section 504 of the Rehab Act. It's also written in the Americans with Disabilities Act. We even have, and if you don't know, your Assistive Technology Act for your specific state and or territory. I would hope that you would know where the resources are in order to find them and to utilize the services that they have in each state and territory. And then also, of course, there's the Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act that talks about assistive technology as well. So as we look at assistive technology, we need to ensure that everybody is on the same page, that we talk about an assistive technology device. And this definition was first included in IDEA in 1990, where any type of device means any item, piece of equipment, or product system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a child with a disability. Now, of course, this term does not include sort of like a medical device that is surgically implanted, i.e. cochlear implant, or the replacement of that device. But what I want to really concentrate on is really that it's any item, piece of equipment, or product system. So that it really can mean anything of what is assistive technology. I also want you to understand that it's not just the device, but it's also the service. So assistive technology is part of that federal definition, where you have service that basically means any service that directly assists the person with a disability, and it's in the selection, acquisition, or use of the AT device. So ensuring that you have access to not only the device but also the services is crucial when it comes to looking at sustainability of maintaining that assistive technology in that particular environment for that particular person.
So the act of feature matching is an assistive technology. It's an assistive technology service.
Great. So feature match is the service, but we really have all these legal requirements telling us what we need to do, but there's not too many legal requirements telling us how to do that. So we really want to make sure that you get the idea that you know what is and how to apply the process. So as we look, we have some guiding principles for assistive technology that we thought would be good for you to sort of keep in mind as we look at assistive technology and these guiding principles. So I'm going to read a couple of these bullets, not all of them, but you will have the handout and the PowerPoint as a resource for you and a reference after today's webinar is done. But we do want to enhance capabilities of people with disabilities, but we also, and this is probably one of the foremost functions and foundations of assistive technology, is lower barriers to achievement, to independence, to progress in the curriculum, to become employed, etc. So we really want to have these technologies and tools available and affordable to those who really need them in order to be productive in society, as well as independent. So we want to increase participation. Go ahead, Kel.
No, go ahead.
We want to increase participation and progression in meaningful activities of life. We want to include a broad range of possible devices and services. So it's not just a one device that could basically answer all of your needs. Sometimes I look at that sort of as what I call the magic wand of assistive technology, where you take a magic wand and you apply it to a person and you give them one device and you say ta-ta, and they're basically quote unquote fixed. When we know that's not the case, and we know that research and past history has always told us about it's not just about the device, it's also about the services being provided and making sure that we follow along with what is needed in order to make that person address the needs of that individual. And we ask to still continue to come back to that individual, especially if they can become successful, because some of the needs that were relevant, let's say, 3 months, 6 months, a year ago, may not be as relevant today. So we want to look at related to function rather than to specific disability categories or sources of equipment. Many of us have tried to look at others because they have a similar disability, when we know that that doesn't work for many of us.
And this idea of related to function is, in these guiding principles, one of the ones that's most related to feature match, because we're always looking at what function somebody needs from the assistive technology, and that begins your feature match list.
Good. And of course, least complex solution that will remove barriers to achievement should also be, kind of a first consideration, just because it's the least complicated, and again, it's devices and services, so you want to ensure that the services are being provided. Second slide of guiding principles for AT is looking at how AT enhances instruction, but it does not replace it. We're not, including assistive technology curriculum and importing it into a classroom for a specific individual. It really is to enhance that instruction. AT is needed to participate in and benefit from other initiatives and activities. So it's not just about the one thing, but really to participate in all of those activities and all of those accessible pieces that need to be addressed. An assessment and intervention form a continuous and dynamic process. So it's not just a one-time thing, but it's continuous It's dynamic. Many people come in and out of the assessment as well as intervention. And systematic problem analysis and solving are really essential. We need to have a team there to look at all of the different types of problems that might arise, and then also the solutions as well. And then collaborative teaming process is required. I think we've said this a million times, but it's really, that probably is one of the most important things to go away with, is that it really is a team, and where you want your members of your team to be flexible, and they're also selected based on the specific needs of either the student or the person with a disability to address their needs in those specific environments and for those specific tasks. Some big ideas around teams is that the student is always the center of the team, the student or the person. Families are critical members. Team members bring a ton of different gifts from knowledge and skills, a lot of observations, ideas, suggestions. I love it when bus drivers start coming to the IEP, because the bus drivers, unfortunately sometimes, know the kid really well because they're on the bus for like more than an hour each, in the morning and more than an hour at night. Where bus drivers and bus aides really know the kids and how they're communicating well on the bus, or if they're not communicating, and hopefully can bring some ideas and suggestions. Multiple perspectives are really vital. We also want to focus on the common interests of the individual achievement and aligning and how to best foster, what they're trying to do. All right. Go ahead.
So as we look at the decision making, something to think about is how are assistive technology decisions? I know Kirk just talked through that team process, but how are things made in your environment? And this is just an image that kind of collapses in, are things made based on purely on how much stuff costs? Is it the I want this, I want that kind of tug and pull? Is it the just, shoot the arrow and pick something, anything from the internet that comes up? Is it the magic wand, kind of the magic hat that Kirk talked about? Is it, the who's going to win decision? Or is it the one thing that's just going to fix it all? So, we like to think that decision-making is a little bit more organized than that, but we do know that that happens in some situations. And the feature match process and some other guidance that's out there to help you with your support services in areas that particularly impact feature match can come from the QUIET group, sort of one of the quality indicators in assistive technology, which is an online presence of over 4,000 people. But as a part of the process, we're in the 20th anniversary of QUIET. The ideas around quality services in the consideration of assistive technology, the assessment of assistive technology, and the evaluation of effectiveness really impact this feature match piece. And I'm just going to show you two of the matrices that where you look and evaluate your own delivery of services. These are in the area of assessment. And it's looking at, are there procedures, as Kirk was talking about? Are you looking at a wide variety of options? So those kinds of things, if this is the first you've ever seen, by show of hands, I think you can raise your hands right next to your name. How many people have seen the QUIET matrices before? So if you go over, you can, so there's a lot of people. I would say we've got probably about a third of folks have raised their hand that they've seen these matrices. For the people who haven't, the QUIET resource is just QIAT.org, and yes, it is pronounced quiet, not Kiat, or all the other things that people want to do with it. But these pages are matrices where you read down the left-hand column the type of indicator that it's a quality service here in the area of assessment, but there are those 8 other areas. And then those columns from 1 to 5 are as you assess yourself, where are you now and where might you look to grow your services to. These will give you some, small steps along the way to reach quality services. So we just wanted to make sure that we threw that in as an example for people who are always asking, oh, am I doing a good job or not? When we look at decision-making frameworks, so that's kind of overall assessment, but when we look at decision-making frameworks that help you get closer to this feature match piece, gathering together information, from people who are, oh, I don't know what to do, or let's use something else, or we're not going to do this before somebody's in a certain grade. Often this is the kind of the things that people are saying that those of us in assistive technology are trying to work through with people and to show them what the possibilities are, that there isn't any kind of a cutoff point to using assistive technology or not using assistive technology. As Kirk mentioned, even within the definition, it's about the function of it in your current environment, where you're at. You don't have to reach a certain level to qualify for assistive technology. So some of the decision-making processes that are out there, here's one that a lot of people use. If this is one that's familiar to you, raise your hand on the participant list. This is the SET framework, originally developed by Joy Zavala and colleagues in the Houston Educational Service Center in Region 4, where it looks at that idea of the environment that our people are in, the tools that they are using are impacted by the tasks that they're doing. That we don't just choose tools out of the sky or based upon what somebody else is doing, but really what it is from that learner themselves, their attributes and abilities, their environmental and what the environment needs. And this is how we start to choose features. What does that environment need? What do I have to produce in that environment for whatever I might be doing? So this breaks down a little bit further. Again, for those of you that did not raise your hand, more information on the SET framework can be found at joyzabala.com at her website there. She collects forms and adaptations to the forms and presentations that she's done. You can get handouts there from that. But we're always looking at that person first. We're looking at the environments that they're in, the specific tasks that they're doing become a real big piece of it. So what are the things that they need to be able to do and learn to reach the expectations for those educational purposes if we're in a school setting? When we move on and look at the tools definition, again, it brings in that everything that's needed by a student in those places. Just to give you another example about those tools is their abilities and those kinds of things transferred into the goals so that you always have your eye on what goals are you trying to obtain. And for just a quick sample of some adaptations that people have done to the SET framework over time, the SET framework is not an assessment. It's a framework of gathering information to help you make decisions. And it's not a narrative. It's a bulleted list. The student, the things about their environment. Sometimes when I'm with teams, we go through the day with the student's schedule. We look at tasks that they have to do related to different parts of the schedule or throughout the day. We'll see that some agencies are adding columns to the SET framework like accommodations. So what kinds of accommodations are happening already within that environment so that everybody has that information all together. And this is one of the things, as Kirk was mentioning, pulling the team together, whether your team is 5 people or your team is 2. If it's you working with a parent and the student, or the individual, then for those of you that are working with older individuals, with you working with them and their significant other, so that you're gathering that kind of information. And then we've also seen that people have looked at what tools somebody might be using now and what kinds of tools, acknowledging what kinds of tools people want to try. And this kind of stuff, that's what we want to try, are the things that are going to end up in a feature match list. But it's not just because it's the name of the product, it's the kinds of supports that somebody needs for these tasks. So these two things start to come together from any of the gathering information places that you might have. One model that we've used with consumers who are, out of the K-12 setting or out of a university setting is the HAT model. Anybody that knows this, go ahead and raise your hand. You've probably done the RESNA course or the ATP class, or have the original information came from the Cook and Hussey book, and we're on, I think, version 4 of that book now. But it really looks at this overall context that somebody is in. It looks at, and then let's see, we've got, again, about a third of the people know this. A lot of people know all the same ones. The context that someone's in, that human themselves, the activity that they're doing, and the assistive technology that supports them. So all of these components coming together. If you do a Google search on the HAT model, you'll find videos, you'll find research papers, and you'll find other supporting information. Not just one website, where you can go to Joy's website to get the set information. The HAT model is kind of dispersed throughout university programs that have used it, and research that's been done on assistive technology outcomes utilizing this HAT model. But it also within HAT, it promotes this idea of looking at the features based upon the activity and the context and making assistive technology decisions for function. So you've got all the different components broken down into the HAT. What are the human pieces that we're looking at? What kind of supports people might get from assistive technology to support physical function, cognitive function, emotional function, whether people are functioning at a novice or an expert level impacts assistive technology decisions. The activity component for adults, is it somewhere in their self-care area? Is it something in productivity where it might be at work? It might be, again, we use this related to university students. It might be in a leisure area. And then, of course, the assistive technology, which they break down, which we're going to break down here a little bit further into the areas of output, processing, and input. So that human technology connection. Kirk, anything to add there?
No, I think that was really great. Just the one comment was thank you for including the HAT model, so teams can see that there is more than one way to frame the way that you're thinking. You do hear a lot of the SET framework, but there is the HAT model, and the HAT model has been really great for looking at worksite assessments and looking at different types of environments where you want to apply assistive technology outside of the K through 12 setting. From a higher education perspective, we're always looking at empowering the student with a disability to ensure that they have those physical, cognitive, emotional pieces in place, which will become, sort of like the milieu, if you will, with oh my gosh, I just used that word and I can't remember. Marcia Scher's version as well. Sorry. Silly me. But
and
Marcia
as you
Scher,
mentioned Marcia's name, we can talk about the MAT.
The MAT, which is great.
Matching persons,
Yeah, matching persons and technology. So there's other different models out there, so don't feel like you're on your own with those models. There are plenty to choose from, but what we've seen teams do is sort of pick and choose from all of those models and made it appropriate for themselves in the content, in the environment in which they're going to be applying assistive technology. So don't feel like you have to keep constraints on what you're using within each framework. Beg, borrow, and steal from all of these frameworks to make it real for you and for your person, and because that's the overall goal, is really to ensure that that person has an independence that they need, or the productivity that they need, or completing their educational or vocational goals.
Cool. Pulling from the HAT model, that idea of input, processing, and output, this is a nice way to break down your tools column if you're using the SET framework. And as we go further, and break each one of these areas down for you, we're really looking at what are the features that are needed by that consumer, within that activity or within that environment or within the task that they have to do. So those features then are going to be looked at as attributes of technology. And when we look at that technology piece, we're looking at the area of input, where how's the person accessing it? How do they connect to that technology? The processing area, where is it, how readable is it, what the layouts are there speed and rate enhancements that we're looking at? This is the cognitive interaction with the technology. The output is the most obvious piece. What do you get as a result of using this? Do I get magnification on a screen? Do I get printed output? Do I get images? Do I get speech output? What is it that you're looking for? Do I need tactual output? And then there are always other properties that we're looking at. What operating system are we working within? What's the ease of use factor? What kind of support do we get from the company? Are there upgrade policies if it's a certain product that needs to have that, or apps that need to have that? So we're looking at these 4 areas when it comes to assistive technology, and the human technology feature match piece is looking at what do we know about that person's abilities and needs, what do we know about those contacts and activities. All those things that we've brought in from the other areas are going to start to feed this feature matching list. So you're essentially creating a list of the kinds of things that are needed. We've given you here now, Kirk mentioned about the feature match charts. These have been molded and adapted over the years, originally from the Pennsylvania Assistive Device Center. I was working there long ago, but we've used these and changed them and looked at different areas. So we're looking at that input. Is it something that's direct selection, or is it something that's indirect? Breaking down direct selection. Am I looking at something that's got a keyboard or an assisted keyboard? And if that's so, how's somebody accessing it? How's that translate into the technology feature name? Technology feature names are funky. Not all companies call things the same. They have this thing called a marketing department, and marketing departments like to market their own terminology for different features. So you'll see, a list of features here in the far right column, but it might be called something different based upon what a company is. So I'm always looking to, what do I need? I can't use a regular keyboard. Maybe I'm using an alternative keyboard. How am I accessing that keyboard? What might that feature be called? Maybe I need a keyboard that's on the monitor or right on the tablet itself. Is it an on-screen keyboard? Is it a virtual keyboard? Companies call things different stuff. Am I accessing things by a pen? Am I accessing things by a mouse? Am I using light pointing? Am I using voice recognition? Am I using eye gaze? Am I continuing to use things like connecting up to other computers? Am I using a switch as a direct selection where it's just making one action? Versus down at the bottom of the chart where it starts to break down switch access into the different switch types, how you might be scanning, what kinds of displays you're looking at, all of those pieces. Sorry about that. All of those things to do with feature matching with switch access and how that breaks down. So you'll see here in the handouts a list of features of assistive technology, matching human interface for input. For processing, we look at processing again as the cognitive interaction with technology. What do we do with keyboard layouts to support cognitive interaction or physical interaction with technology? When we look at other types of support like the things that add cognitive supports like grammar supports and spelling supports, menu supports. What are those features that you see in technology? Again, another cognitive interaction are language supports. So for those of you that clicked your button on AAC system, you know, how are things for single key activation and what are those features called? When I start to have multiple key activation and all of the different companies' lingos of how things are retrieved and stored are going to impact cognitive interaction, and looking at, you know, dividing out the world of 300 AAC apps down into fewer if you're looking at some based upon the type of language encoding is done. You know, we look at branching systems, you know, and how those things are done within some of the low-tech devices and high-tech devices. So, and then at the bottom here of the chart is rate enhancers. So rate enhancers work both in app support for writing, app support for communication. You know, there's a wide variety of ways that we use rate enhancers. And then as I was mentioning, output is one of the most obvious things that we get in assistive technology, and looking at those features, what kind of output are you looking for auditory? You know, is it something like a beep? Is it something like a voice? You know, what are you looking for output auditory-wise? Visual. You know, what are the visual options with contrast and size and hard copy? And, of course, all of these areas are going to break down even into tinier bits depending upon the product that you're looking at. Tactual output, you know, are you looking for alert shaking? Are you looking at Braille? Are you looking at refreshable Braille? Are you looking at tactual maps and the kinds of features that might be called in technology? And, again, companies have different names for things. And then, of course, what will your technology interface with if it needs to be connected to other types of technologies, and looking at all the various type of connectors. I was just talking through somebody with this today with connecting an eye gaze system to a laptop. You know, what are we looking for that way? And then lastly, kind of the catch-all category in feature matching. Some of those other things is portability, company policies, and other issues like cost, transportation of it, so not forgetting to get your mounting systems that you might need, those types of things, all impact. What we're looking at with these feature match charts is the ability to then, this is one of the forms from the set group of forms, the ability to take those features and make a list of them. So for a particular person that you're working with, a student, I'll even do this for a resource room. If we're looking for tools for an AT lab at a university, or tools for an AT, you know, within a school resource room, what are the kind of features that people need? And that goes across your columns. And then the names of products go down this first column. So you start to write names in here, and then what people have done is, like, if you've done a set framework and people have listed things in the tools, those items go here in the tools list. Now we have more idea what features that we need, and I can start to go through now and say, yes, this product has it has this feature, it has this feature, this product has this feature, it has this one. So you start to have kind of this list of either whether you do with check marks, or some people will put in yeses and nos, you know, in different places as they go across and look at product by product with the feature list that's specific to the person that you're working with. This really helps inform people that it isn't a magic wand, that assistive technology can have a systematic process into coming down into the kinds of things that you'll trial. And usually I'll leave this last column here for, what do we want to trial? And then as we've gone through the list, it isn't about the product with the most features wins. It's about narrowing down your original ideas. So people might have slung in ideas from everything they've ever seen, stuff they've seen on TV that made them cry, all those kinds of ways that people come up with product names. And this is the way you acknowledge it. You write all of those things on the list. As an AT person, I'm not here to shut you off from your dream product. I'm here to figure out if that product has the kinds of features that you need. That's my role in it. And sometimes my role is finding out names to put in this list if people are unaware of what the items are. But I try to tell people, you know 3/4 of the information. If you don't even know one assistive technology tool, you know 3/4 of the information that you need to do a feature match process. You know the person. You know the context or the environment that you're in, and you know the tasks. And you have probably figured out what are some of the things that support them, like voice output or hearing things word by word versus by a full sentence. In the AAC world, how are things stored for them? 1-hit retrieval, 2-hit retrieval, those kinds of things. Do they need to have branching? So where they go, does things have to be categorical? So you have those kinds of things as the features. And then figure out your apps and figure out your devices and start to go through and say, yes, it has it, no, it doesn't. Yes, it has it, no, it doesn't. And again, the idea in feature match is to whittle down from all of the possibilities to the items that make the most sense for somebody to trial. Because then, and also, where do we get this information from, Mr. Kirk? Where's some more information come from to help people?
Well, funny you should ask that question, Kelly. You can find many different types of feature match examples, such as Call Scotland at the University of Edinburgh. They have an assistive technology project that is there where you can actually find a whole ton of different types of pamphlets and strategy and posters and leaflets in some really great ways to look at one is feature matching, but they also have different types of a guide to single and multi-message devices. They have Chromebook apps and extensions specifically for learners with dyslexia, or they have different types of apps for learners, with meeting the legal requirements, for computer accessibility and what are those some of the things. So this is a really wonderful resource for you to check out, and the direct link is in there, but it's also part of our resources that we have at the end slide of this, as well as you will have that within your handout as well. The feature match company example, this is through a company called PRC. They have a device accessory selection sheet. And so it can be in the form of a sheet, it can be a form of a website. You can really find out a lot of different types of just listing of different types of device features that are available. Sometimes it's just a matter of also getting input from your consumer. In this particular example, is what color do you want your device? You have the options of a black, blue, red, pink, purple, green, or yellow for the trim color of an Accent 800. But it's also a matter of getting the person that you're working with, if they don't have any other options or choices or of selection, this might be a really great way for them to start getting the buy-in and also saying, this is my device. This is something that I wanted, and get the buy-in from them so that they would use that device because it is their device. It's something that is not. Sometimes we work with people with disabilities who we work for people with disabilities and not with, and sometimes that also makes it so that the person who happens to have a disability is basically taken care of, and they have learned that they really don't have so much of a voice in the selection or acquisition of their assistive technology. But as they grow older and hopefully, as they become more self-empowered, they start looking at what are some of the things that I really want, what are some of the things that I really need, and what are some of the ways that I can gain access to these different types of technology applications. And I think that is really important for when we looked at that device feature chart that Kelly spoke about earlier. So when we look at the tools, we really look at what are some of the devices, what and why, what are some of the services that will support those devices, and who is going to be responsible for those services. Number 3 is, of course, training. We know that people need training when it comes to specific devices that are addressing a specific need in the application of those technologies into either the curriculum or into the work plan or into a vocational plan. But also sometimes if we're talking about ubiquitous technologies, is we might need training just on some of the embedded supports that already exist within those either mobile devices or smartphones or some of the tablets that already have some accessibility features, but we just don't know where to pull them and how to gain access to those embedded supports. I also think that there's a lot of strategies and accommodations that still need to be made. So it's not looking at, this is the third time we're saying this, but the magic wand. Just because you have the device doesn't necessarily mean that it's applied properly and or productively. So we really need to ensure that we outline those strategies and accommodations so that we can have opportunities for the people whom we serve to utilize their technology as a tool and to become more productive and independent. We're going to bring in that set framework again here because I really like to also outline that when you're working with persons with disabilities, and sometimes they have an idea, and let's say, for example, and I think I learned this from Kelly, is that they see the guy on the box when they're using voice dictation, and the guy on the box has his feet up on the desk, and he has a headset on, and he's just dictating into the computer. And so, of course, some of the students whom we work with say, well, I just want to use voice recognition because that's easy. Well, you have to understand that voice recognition may look easy, but there's a lot of, cognitive planning, information that really needs to be processed from a person who's trying to use voice as their main input. So there's a lot of the strategies and procedures that really need to be taken into place as we look at specific tools. But the nice thing about this particular form is that you list that down and you say voice recognition as one of the possibilities. And then you look at the different types of functions that are needed, and then you decide through a collaborative team process to see if that particular tool is really going to be utilized in the best ways possible. And then you acknowledge that the person wants to have this device, and you look at that and you understand and acknowledge that the person has been heard as part of the decision-making process within the feature matching process.
Also, that form that Kirk just showed, you can use it twice. Once is when you're figuring out what are you've got all of the features at the top and all of the possible products and narrowing it down. And then we're going to talk about trials. I also use this during the trial process, erasing all of the rest of the items down to just the items that we're trialing with the same feature match list. And then after we've trialed each app or whatever it might be, I go back to the person, their family members, the people involved in the process, and we rate each of the features from 1 to 5. So on 1 to 5, Kirk was giving the voice recognition example. How's the built-in, voice recognition to the iPad working for you? So how do you go through that with 1 to 5? Now if we add something on from naturally speaking, how's that going? And each feature rating that 1 to 5. So we'll use this form twice in the process.
And then when you plan for trials, you definitely want to start planning and strategizing, really, as where you're going to get these trials. And like I alluded to earlier, is that what are some of the embedded supports that actually could be, just basically turned on for you at that particular time, or where do you need to go get the device in order to either borrow it. There's different state programs that are out there that let you borrow equipment from the State Tech Act projects. There's also vendors and manufacturers who will lend out equipment. There's also insurance companies as well that actually, if they're part of the payment or the funding piece, they may support the trial piece just to make sure that you make a good decision about a high-tech system. And then you can also create some different mock-ups from what you have, whether it be the tablet systems or the iPads or with interfaces or maybe even some apps, could possibly, do a nice mock-up of that. But then it'll give you enough information, hopefully, to then, move you forward within the process. Some other things is definitely, collect your data. The data collection piece during the trials is imperative for you to then say, well, we based our decision, of purchasing this particular product because of all of this data that has shown that, this is really answering quite a number of the needs that you're having. It has been good for this person who's trialing it for 3-4 weeks, whatever the case might be. But there's also different types of set forms that are able for you, and I'm going to show you one in just a second, to help with your data collection. Also in Quiet, you have the evaluation of effectiveness quality indicators that you might want to look at to see how how effective was your evaluation. And then third, there's different types of language sampling and data logging pieces that you can actually have in order to help you decide in tracking the data. So this sort of like the language acquisition monitor from Katja Hill, and looking at LAM and data logging. Some other companies have also come up with some of the ways to data log as well. Kurzweil, a great example of, how that person has utilized their software and to what extent did they use that. So again, data is huge in regards to trials. This is the form I was talking about, is looking at establishing availability and service needs, for promising tools. So looking at this form from a set form from joyzavala.com, you're justifying your choices within their set data and their feature match. So is that tool, available? Is the available to all students, or is it just available through special education? And then, what are some of the tools that need to be acquired if, consideration or assessment data establishes, the student need? So what are some of those other tool availability pieces? And this is where you kind of blend that whole AT, EdTech, IT type of process. But you still want to document it, especially in a child IEP, because what if, that iPad or those Chromebooks all of a sudden go away next year, and then they're gone away for everyone. And if it's not documented within the IEP, you want to ensure that your student who has the IEP, who's needing those tools in order to become independent or progress in their academic environment, you want to make sure that that's documented to its fullest extent. The second part of that is also the services that are required. So what are the services that are required for the student, for the staff, and also for the family? Kelly?
As we move forward and talk about feature match in your setting, and as you look to use some of the forms, there was a question about being a little bit more specific with an example. I had a hard time getting permission from teams to share full form examples with 200 unknown IEP members. I do have a couple of samples depending upon whether you're coming from the AAC world or if you're coming from the computer access world or the word prediction world that I use in my individual training, that if you write to me, I can send you that individually, but I wasn't allowed to share that on the webinar. And our emails will be at the end here. And it really is a matter of collecting that information as you're talking to people. You know, people are in different areas as it comes to implementing assistive technology. Some people, you know, they get dumped into assistive technology and immediately they're exploring all the options. And so some way of figuring out what's the difference between one thing I just saw and something else I just saw. I learned the input processing and output process way back when I got started. And when I went to Closing the Gap last week, I was still using it in the exhibit hall. So as brand new things are being shown, like the SMILE for switch access, the SMYLE, where it takes an image with the camera of your face and then looks at the position of the mouth, and then the mouth becomes the switch. You know, those kinds of things. Oh, yeah, we're like, oh, cool technology. Well, you can't just be like chase a shiny object all the time in AT. You have to figure out what is it about that. You know, what kind of technology do I have to have? Do I have somebody that can control their mouth? You know, those pieces of it. What am I using it with switch access? So that whole part of how you're moving through exploring options, keeping track of options, you know, installing things to try or just installing the product within its environment, getting started with initial implementation, and working through the issues that come up. And it's not about abandonment and go buy something else. It's working through those issues with what you have, and then seeing if you need to supplement it with anything else as you move on into a sustaining model of it. And so that, I mean, it always is this process that we work through. We've mentioned a couple times the Quiet website. The website itself is where you go to for the documents and handouts, and there's a resource section where people have put their own forms that they use in their environment. And then there's the Quiet list. And the Quiet list is, you know, an online presence where you can ask questions. People, like I said, there's over 4,000 people on the list, and people are answering questions. And the more information you can give, you know, I needed a device that, and then start to add specifics, you're going to get better suggestions from the list, and you're not just going to get like everybody's favorite tool. Because everybody's favorite tool is fine for that person, but is it going to be right for you and what you're looking for the person that you're working with? We've been trying to deal with questions as we go through. So it's about, you know, what is it that students can use? Well, what is it that they need to produce? So that, again, what's that task that they have to do? What kind of task do they have to do? What do you know that supports them? Those are the kinds of feature lists that you're looking for, and those are great questions that you can put out on the Quiet list as well. As Kirk mentioned, this idea of working together, I know sometimes we often feel that we're just the only person doing it, you know, and applying assistive technology on our own in a vacuum, but we're always working with that consumer and and people that support that individual and the people that are around them, and pulling people in by saying, what do you think might work, can help, you know, initiate that working together and getting people to give buy-in, rather than just, you know, listing what it is that you think that they should have.
And
Kirk
lastly,
mentioned that we
sorry.
Yeah,
I was
Kirk
just going
mentioned
to
that
say
we
the
have
resources.
a list of resources. Yeah, go ahead, Kirk, sorry.
No, it's fine. You have the resources here. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. Here is our contact information. Sorry, mine is in yellow, but it's kirkatp@outlook.com. I'll put it in the message window.
And, you know,
We're both on Twitter. We're both on Twitter at Kirk Behnke and at Kelly Fonner. So if you wanted to also be part of discussions on an AT chat, we usually have AT chats on every other Wednesday evening. If you wanted to join us on the Twitter chat.
Okay. And with that,
yeah, thank you very much for your time today. I hope this was enjoyable as well as informative.